The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated.
Welcome back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my panel, your favorites and mine, Dr. Scott Gersher and Dr. Mark Bound, and today we are going to be discussing healthcare. And we have a very interesting, apparently alien technology, according to Trump, although he did take his video down, with a med bed that will regrow your limbs, and I guess it will regrow internal organs, and it's going to do all kinds of things, just like the Star Trek bed and all sorts of stuff. And Trump apparently did not even know that he was advertising something through AI, and when someone realized that this was completely AI generated, they took it down. But initially, Trump had retweeted it or rebleeded it or whatever it is. And so we have Trump RX. And that's the type of healthcare we're going to get. We're all going to get a card, apparently, but select people will get it first, according to a non-existent Fox News. And Fox News, actually, they had to go on and say, we never actually said this. This is totally AI generated. That everybody would get a brand new card that would give people access to totally brand new hospitals in the United States, and we would each have access to our own med bed that would cure everything and give people perfect health.
I'm in. So my hope is that the med bed can help me grow my hair back to its original 1970s luster and length. So if it could do that, I'm all in. I'm good.
Well, we could do that with AI. I think that would be a hoot. We gotta get us a picture. You now with the hair you had when you were 16, 17 years old?
All the way up till about, I'd say 30. I'm 35. I had the blonde golden locks. It was down to the shoulders. Oh yeah.
I never did see your baby pictures. So, all right. So before we'll talk about med beds. We'll talk about healthcare in general. But there's a really interesting thing about this med bed thing that resonates with some other stuff. And that has to do with Portland and the fact that Trump wanted to put troops in Portland, which may or may not be on the table right now. And he was talking to a reporter, Yamiche Alcindor. And he said, well, I'm rethinking Portland because apparently people aren't seeing the same thing I am. And my people came to me and they said, Portland's not that bad. And I said, aren't you seeing the same thing I am? And what he's talking about is that the night before he announced that he was going to send troops to Portland, he was watching Fox, and Fox had a story about the mayor of Portland wanting to kick ICE out of Portland. They had overran something, done something that was not in their contract with him, and he wanted them out. And there were protests in Portland all the time now. And what Fox had done was, because the story was a little flat and not exactly sexy enough for them, they intertwined footage from 2020 from the George Floyd protests, which included like people setting things on fire and people getting beat up and all kinds of stuff like that. They embedded that footage into the current story about Portland, and apparently Trump saw it, I guess with his dim understanding of things, thought that was what was going on right now, and overreacted to it and decided to send the troops to Portland. He's still getting his information from Fox and from right-wing nut jobs on Twitter and stuff. And he's still getting his info. He has the greatest intelligence, or what it had been anyway at one time, the greatest intelligence factory in the world. And he's still relying on Fox and these other sources for his information that he's making decisions on. And MedBeds is another example of that, because he retweeted something that I guess Lara Trump, his daughter-in-law, had on her Fox show, which I didn't even know she had, which is a Shonda for the Goyim. And it is all about some kind of Tesla biohealing medbed thing that doesn't exist, but is I guess an idea that somebody at Elon Musk's idea factory came up with, or something. I don't know. Like maybe it has nothing to do with the Tesla, the car, and it's just the same name. But the idea is that these beds, you just lie on them, and it heals you. Trump believes what he sees on Fox, and so he put that out there that our healthcare concerns are over because there are going to be med beds, and even if you lost an arm, you can lie in a med bed and your arm will come back. It would regrow your arm and restore you to health and full health and strength. Really, really bizarre stuff. But number one, I mean, can somebody like in this president get a real news source for once instead of the crap that he's watching, and instead of relying on his intelligence or the FBI or reasonable sources, he's always going to these sensationalist fake news sources and believing everything he sees. So I'll stop there and then we'll get back into the healthcare conversation.
Yeah. And this is the guy that has his hand on the nuclear weapons. I mean,
yes, true.
Oh my gosh. Like I said, hopefully I will get my hair grown back. I'm truly hoping, but I don't see it happening. I always like, when I bring something like this up, and it's just a little bit off the topic of that. Whenever I bring this up to people that I know here in South Carolina, it almost is a full body workout watching them tie themselves up into knots to be able to explain why any of this stuff shouldn't bother us. It is truly amazing to me how they do this. And I guess my attitude is that, if med beds were real, that'd be great. That'd be absolutely great.
Absolutely.
But I mean, maybe we ought to take some money. If there's any possibility of this happening, take it out of the military or take it out of anybody and, maybe make this happen. But something that Scott said before we started this conversation, and he asked a very interesting question. Why do Republicans hate healthcare so much? Why are they so against it? Why do they see this, when somebody says, it should be a fundamental human right, healthcare, why are they so against it all the time? I don't understand it. They cut Medicaid. This is a vulnerable population. If you want Medicaid, you have to be at a certain income level to be able to receive this, what they call entitlement. But the fact is that, isn't that what it's supposed to be about? Helping the people that can't help themselves. Why are they so against it? Why are they so against vaccinations? Why are they so against, having qualified people at the NIH or at the CDC? Why are they so against all these things? And it absolutely amazes me. Now we've got a president who is talking about med beds, which would be the epitome of healthcare. I mean, you want to make gazillions of dollars? Create a med bed. You'll make gazillions of dollars out of everybody. You want world peace? Create a med bed and say to those countries, all right, everybody stop to knock off the bullshit. We're going to give you med beds instead, and all your people are going to be fine. But for some reason, the people, the Republicans are just so dead set against it, of anything that benefits society, at least that anything that people that are of the liberal attitude, or even people such as myself, which are the moderate attitude. I don't have a problem helping out people that can't help themselves. I really don't. I always say my wife and I have been very lucky in our lives. And yeah, there's a responsibility there as a citizen, as a human being. So I truly don't get it. But then we get Trump. And again, I honestly think Trump RX, when I first saw that, I said, this is an answer to what's called Obamacare, because it's always known as Obamacare. There's the act that it is, but everybody calls it Obamacare. And Scott's made the great point that the only reason Trump wants a Nobel Prize is because Obama has one. Well, now he wants something in there with his name onto it. You're going to have a card in your pocket that's always going to remind you of Trump RX. That's so narcissistic. He didn't care about helping you. And anybody that thinks he does has to look at his party's policies. They've never been pro healthcare. They've never been pro helping somebody, that's less fortunate. They've never been all about, it's all bootstraps. It's all Reagan. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yeah, easy to say when you were in Hollywood. Easy to say when you were the governor of, and you've always had this great job. Easy to say. But we're talking about not too many people have those opportunities. And I agree with Scott. I've never been able to figure out why they have such an aversion to healthcare. And I wish I did, but I just don't. I can't tell.
I remember talking about this with the CEO of the company that I worked for in Germany. And he said, we've pretty much straightened this out in 1870, and you guys still haven't figured it out yet. What gives? And I didn't know at the time, I was like, I really wish I could tell you. At that time we had the Obamacare. It had passed. It was constantly under assault, as it is now. But the UK passed their National Insurance Act of 1911 that provided medical care for everyone in the country, or at least their workforce. I think they added mothers and children later. In 1912, Teddy Roosevelt tried to get health care covered, but he ended up losing the election. FDR tried, but the AMA was against it because they thought that it would undermine the ability of doctors to control healthcare, and that they didn't want that to happen. They didn't want the government to do it. So they are the ones, the AMA, that came up with the term socialized medicine. But it seems that like every time it had come up in the United States, that it was conservatives or Republicans who opposed it. It continues down to this day, where they seem to have this. It seems bizarre to say, like that you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or that real men don't need health care. Rub a little dirt on it, and that's all you really need. And that kind of thing. I was like, ridiculous. In 1965, we got Medicare and Medicaid. If you look at those votes, I guarantee you those votes were not overwhelmingly positive on the part of Republicans. Obviously, Hillary Clinton was, completely pilloried for trying to work out a health care plan that would have been, I believe, a public option plan. Bill Clinton lost the House because of that and declared the era of big government over, and so on and so forth. It's why Biden told Obama that passing the PPACA, or whatever it was originally called, was a big fucking deal, because it had been so antagonistic to Republicans that they never wanted to do it. Well, we live in an older society, a sicker society. Our water is no good. Our air is no good. Our food is no good. Instead of having all these small bits of healthcare for veterans, and healthcare for really old and poor people, healthcare for this person or that, and have the worst cases covered by the government, right? The sickest people, the oldest people, the poorest people covered by the government, which I think actuarially is a really bad deal for the government. We cannot get a national healthcare plan that covers all of that and doesn't blow, I'm going to guess, $100 billion hole in the budget by providing tax incentives to employers to offer their employees healthcare insurance that gets worse every year and still undercuts the budget. They still take those tax breaks, and they're not good plans anymore. At one time they were. The best plans I've ever had when I worked for the government, and yet the government doesn't want to provide that for everybody else. So it seems incomprehensible, and they're making up these lies right now. talking about how the Democrats want health care for illegal immigrants. Like that's what they settled on. Everything gets blamed on illegal immigrants. They're the Jews of today. And they're and it's not true. Apparently, I mean, you can look this up yourself. It is not true, and yet they insist that that's what Democrats want because they know that it resonates with the American people, xenophobia and hatred of the other, and that they would never want to go for that. But they don't understand that they're hurting themselves, they're hurting their children, they're hurting their parents, their older parents, and that we really need to reform healthcare, and at some point or another over the next, I'm going to say 10 years, when this nonsense with Trump is over, there is going to be a national cover everyone healthcare plan because healthcare is a right for everyone and we need it.
So Scott, go into the chat of what we're doing here. You asked for it.
I asked for it. I never look at the chat. I did hear it dinging.
Yeah, that's what that was. Well, aren't the now because the government has
Hold on, Brooke. Hold on. What are you laughing at, Scott?
I'm laughing at the frame. Is that like a wooden frame? Like, Is this from the Middle Ages?
This is from the Middle Ages. This is 1976.
This is high school?
Yep.
Handsome young fella. You have a mustache? I can't really tell.
I had a mustache. It was blonde as shit. You couldn't tell.
Damn.
Yeah, no kidding.
Very nice.
See, there you go. All right, go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, I was going to say, and now because of the government shutting down, because of the way the so-called big, beautiful bill has been written, the ACA, the so-called Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, the credit that people got that were being used to help fund a person's health care bought through the marketplace are going to expire. And as I understand it, people's health care costs, the premiums, are going to be going up in some cases by 50%, 75%, 80%, and people are simply not going to be able to afford their health care. That is going to be catastrophic, and that will start January 1st. So I don't really know what happens with people's health. I mean, clearly the Republican Party and Trump, I mean, they don't care, as you say, and they've never cared about it. And it's horrifying. And Trump also wants to make people who do work for the federal government, he wants to eliminate their health care coverage for anybody who survives all the purges. Have you heard any more about any of that?
No, I guess my thought is what we could do for healthcare and for the health of the American populace and for the infrastructure of the American, our continent here, our country. If we spent only half on defense against most of the countries that we're aligned with anyway, if we just took half that money and put it into healthcare, if we just put it into infrastructure, it's amazing the stuff that we could do. And the fact is that we don't. Oh boy. So if anybody's wondering, Scott and I are sending pictures of us in high school back and forth to each other, which is just hilarious. Anyway. I always look at it like the stuff that we're spending money on. How much does it benefit? Well, we got to have national defense. My God Almighty, if we don't have enough right now, what the hell do we need? I mean, who in the hell are we afraid of? It boggles me.
And when and I agree, because I spend enough time in Europe, right? And I would fly into the Frankfurt airport sometimes, and I'd be like, my God, why can't we have an airport like this in New York City? It is a magnificent place. I mean, you could spend like a weekend in the airport, the hotel, all the restaurants and stores and stuff like that. And then if you want to go somewhere, it's attached to a train station, which is like state of the art also. And by the way, I mean, I took the train down to New York City from Connecticut yesterday. You could lose fillings on that train. In Europe, in Germany, you could be going like 170 kilometers per mile, and you have to look out the window to make sure that you're still moving, because it just seems like you're like sitting there. It's like you're in your living room. It doesn't feel like you're moving. And here the tracks are bumping and you're slamming back and forth in your seat to the person next to you, and you can't, God forbid you should ever have to stand up for the entire time. You'd really be losing it all the time. And then so when Trump says, we need to get NATO countries to contribute more to their healthcare, to their military. I agree with that, but only if it means that we could stop spending so much. But they're spending he wants them to spend 5%. We're going to spend 5%. 5% of our GDP is an enormous sum of money. And I don't understand. There's never like a peace dividend here, or NATO is stepping up so we could step back. Let's not spend so much money on the military and spend a little bit more on the people here and make sure that we live in a healthy society. Seems like a no-brainer to me, but yet it does not happen. It's not happening.
And it hasn't, we blame the Republicans an awful lot about this, but I'll tell you, the Democrats have done very little compared to what they could do. They've had the opportunity as well to be able to really make, advances in this. There's been times when they've had control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. And it gets talked about, but it usually gets talked about when you're at the disadvantage of numbers, when you really can't do anything about it. That's when we're going to talk about it all the time. When, bottom line is we're going to play lip service to it, but we're going to tell you, listen, there's nothing we can do. It's not our fault. I think that's one of the reasons why, and we were talking about a previous podcast, so many Democratic voters are saying, stand your ground. Enough of that. But let's face it, Democrats, if you get back, if by some stretch of imagination, with the way things are gerrymandered, you're able to get back into power, there's going to be people expecting you to do shit. You've been talking about this for a very, very long time. And they're going to start expecting you to, get out there and actually do something. So that's where the rubber meets the road. And healthcare should be something. We're in the 21st century, for God's sakes. No one need die because they can't get health care, and no one need go broke. And I've told this story before. My father and my mother did very well in their lives. And my father passed away at the age of 73, and I was up in New York, helping my mother with making the arrangements and stuff. And then the phone rang. And it was the insurance company, and they wanted to talk to my father. And I said, I'm sorry, my father's passed away. And the woman goes, oh, well, she goes, okay, we're waiting for the stuff to come in then. And I said, well, what did you need? She goes, well, we wanted to tell your dad that his health care, he had maxed out. He had totally maxed out. $5 million he had maxed out. He had been sick for quite some time, in and out of the hospital quite a bit. And she goes, I dread these calls, but I had to tell your father that he was maxed out. That would have meant, if my father had lived, that they would have had to sell their house. They would have had to sell everything that they owned to be able to pay for the health care. And who knows how long that would have gone. And it's a terrible story, but it's a telling story. That, again, my parents did everything they were supposed to do as citizens, and they did everything they were supposed to do. But the fact is that he had been sick for, I think it was about 7 years. And he was COPD, and he had a couple of different things, and he had leukemia. When the girl called, she goes, I had to tell him that was it. There was no more insurance. And that included, and of course he was a veteran. So he did have veterans benefits. He still had those, but not for the care that he needed. I wasn't going to step up for that, because I asked her about it. I said, well, yeah, but he's still got his veteran benefits. And she goes, yeah, but she goes, good luck getting the treatment he needs. Good luck. That system is so overtaxed right now that he'll wait a lot. And because he's always used the private system most, he goes to the back of the line. And she goes, I hate to say that, but she goes, that's just the way the system works. Those people that have been using the veterans benefits all this time, they're first considered. And your dad will be waiting 6, 8, 10 months before he gets in to see anybody. And I said, but he can't wait. We lived in the upstate of New York. They did at the time. And I said, where's the nearest veterans hospital? And she started naming them off, and they were all 2.5, 3 hours away. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is what we're down to. Two people that built a life. They had been married 55 years. And it came right on down to the fact that because my dad got sick, almost financially destroyed them. And that should never happen to anyone. I'm sorry. It just should not. Not in this day and age, not in the United States of America. That's not what we're about. All right. I think we answered that. Scott's got his Mets fans. Scott has shown me his picture from when he was in high school. I think those two girls he paid to kiss him on the cheek. I'm just saying. I just maybe not.
Nope.
So it was his two sisters. No. Go ahead, Brooke. Take us out.
Alrighty, so thank you to everyone for listening to us. Speaking about Trump RX, and of course the whole MedBed thing is AI. There is no such thing. There are none of those are available to anybody anywhere because they are not real. Just a disclaimer there. And so we do thank you for listening. And if you're not yet subscribed on the platform of your choice, please do so. Subscribing is free, and we look forward to seeing you again next time on the Nova Society.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert, cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com.